Welcome to the Marketing Summarized video series, where we talk about marketing, business, and everything that makes your working life better. In this episode of our podcast is about Facebook removing news on its platform as a reaction to the federal government's news media bargaining code. We will be joined by one of Sydney's strongest SEO and digital marketer, Mr. Oliver, aka Ollie Applebaum. Ollie, how are you, mate?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Good to be here.
Oh, good. Nice for us to join us on this very, very hot topic in the late hour of today. Ollie, I woke up this morning learning that Facebook has literally removed news sharing in Australia as a direct result of the news media bargaining code. Although we've been hearing Google threatening to leave Australia, no one really saw Facebook taking on the federal government's code head on. Yeah. What do you think about this topic, mate?
Well, for starters, I, as a marketer, find this super interesting because it's one of the most dramatic changes in the digital landscape we've seen in Australia ever, maybe. It's very much been something that's rolled out a little too quickly, my personal opinion. There's a lot of changes to how international publishers can syndicate content to Australia via Facebook and vice versa. It seems like effectively Facebook in Australia has become an echo chamber from the outside world, and even for news publishers in Australia. So very interesting, and I don't necessarily think it was played the right way.
I totally agree with you on that one. Yesterday, I read the Treasurer of Australia saying that he spoke to Mark Zuckerberg and everything is cool, right? That there are negotiations and the media code is taken in consideration, right? Mate, I woke up this morning and the first thing I've noticed, everyone on my feeds, yes, I check my email as soon as I wake up, and my LinkedIn and my Facebook when I wake up too. Oh my God, the ABC News is gone. You know, their pages are gone. Like the content is gone. That is to me shocking because it was almost, to me, it looked like Facebook just did a blanket. Okay, anything government and news gone. But what do you think about that, mate?
I personally think you might be right. To be honest, with the sources that I've tried to chase, I've been looking at this most of today, not doing much else, because it appears that it rolled out today. I don't know how much thought was put into it. It might be a test case for Facebook to see how they can respond in other markets if legislation impedes their progress and impedes how they can work with their user base and publishers in other countries. But I've noticed that the content from governmental Facebook pages, links to government websites, content that isn't from publishers alone has been wiped from Facebook completely and can't be seen. So pages have lost a lot of content. It's been broad strokes. The most interesting thing for me right now is to see if Facebook advertisers that are linking to content that's been flagged as coming from publishers has been removed, and if this has affected the ad spend of any Facebook advertisers and thereby affecting Facebook's revenue and bottom line in Australia. But I think they knew this would happen and they were willing to take that risk in light of the changes that the media code was threatening.
The first thing I did is I went to my accounts, right? And I checked every single one of them if they got affected. And so far, thank you, none of them were affected. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, or next week, right? I think about 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago, Google did something similar, where if you Google, let's say ABC News, you see their GMB, their Google My Business profile, and that's it. There's no actual ABC News link there. And that went to the news very quickly, and the next day it was back. So hopefully you're right. Facebook, as far as Facebook is concerned, this is only like a test or maybe a warning shot. I personally can see that the Liberal government is creating laws to protect, well, the Murdoch empire's interest. Like old money forcing new money to give it more money. Do you think this law is driven by the old way empires trying to protect their business in this new world? What do you think?
I agree. I really do think it's politically driven. Me personally, as a marketer, I tend to get stuck in the nitty gritty. So I'm more interested in how this is going to affect the small publishers, what they're doing, rather than the intent behind the legislation from the government itself. And what I'm thinking is that perhaps we're going to see a lot of small publishers that have relied on Facebook as a source of organic social visibility, having to look inwards at email, getting traffic from other means, organic SEO, which we love, paid search. I mean, who knows what's going to change with that in the coming weeks around the media code from a Google standpoint, but it looks like they're more open and receptive to the media code, given that they've just made a deal with one of the big media companies here in Australia. So really interesting. And I think maybe this is good for marketing overall in Australia. It's become the Wild West again, and that means it's going to be innovation from companies, and that's exciting.
That's right. I mean, email marketing could be back. Yes, a lot of my peers may disagree with me on this one. I think email marketing is still effective as far as e-com is concerned, but not necessarily transferring, lead generation, leads, nurturing them into a customer. It's no longer as effective. Maybe you're right. It's a way to go about this one. Do we really need to go back to the old days of, if you want to get news, buy a newspaper? Do you think that's going to come back? Because I haven't bought a newspaper. I can't remember last time I bought a newspaper. Not even a magazine, mate. Are they forcing us to do that again? Like the subscription, you need to subscribe, get your paper in the morning. That's how you get your news.
It's really hard to say. I mean, obviously these news publishers have really needed to evolve to the digital age. I don't know about you, but I've seen people trying to sell subscriptions face-to-face in train stations around Sydney. So they've resorted to marketing at every level, including direct marketing.
Yeah.
I think Facebook definitely was a big component. As for exactly how much news and publishing, it's really kind of hard to define or to understand how Facebook has defined publishing, particularly given the fact that there's been amendments to the rollout today. And there's really no way to tell until Facebook releases another update. So to my knowledge, and I've been keeping pretty close tabs, there was a rollout, an update from Facebook at about.fb.com, Facebook's news hub this morning, as everything rolled out. Nothing yet. And they alleged that news makes up less than 4% of the content people see in their newsfeed. And that's directly what they've said. I personally don't believe that to be the case, or at the very least, based on the amount of pages and links from external sources of Facebook that have been cut. I believe they've wiped out more than that 4% of what people are seeing, but only time will tell. We need more information from Facebook themselves, and also from smaller and large publishers on how their content has been affected. People are just kind of seeing like the fire happen in front of our eyes, but it's really once the embers burn down and we see the ashes, see how it's really affected these publishers, that we'll get an idea of how sweeping these changes that were made.
Totally agree with you on that one. I'd like to see what's going to happen tomorrow if the ban is still on. It could be a warning shot, and well, it has happened before. It could happen again. Yeah.
I think there's definitely amendments that are coming to what they've done. I definitely don't think, my personal opinion is that for a company this large to completely roll back what they've said they're doing, especially when they've released updates in their own informational portals on the internet, it would look really bad for trust in the company. They're listed, that's not a good thing to do. But I think how they detect what is a publisher, what is news, will be changed over time. They've probably gone a little too broad stroke here. And that would be amended. Again, there's not really a great way for us to tell at this point until some studies or people who have crawled Facebook put out some studies.
So having said that, in 2021, I think Australians, as citizens and consumers of media, are very educated. We know, we pick and choose which content to consume, right? And the internet has helped that, right? In your opinion, how in touch are the lawmakers when they created this media code?
I mean, to ask another question on the back
that's
of
a tough one. Yeah.
It's what are they in touch with? Like the interests of, as you've said, the big media empires are in touch with the needs of the people, and that's hard to say.
Let's go to how in touch are they with search and social media and how it actually works.
Well, look, I definitely think Facebook on social media, at least what I'm seeing today in some of the digital marketing communities, um, is being painted in a very different light to the layman. In that, for a lot of people who are not really in the digital space, Facebook is being seen as the bad guy, where they're not willing to pay media publishers when they might not understand the extent and the impact. Facebook doesn't really ask for people to share news content on its platform. It's a privately owned enterprise. I don't think there's a lot of benefit in them paying publishers. And again, I also don't know how much it affects users for this news to be gone. I think it's irritating for a lot of us, but I also think a lot of us are going to migrate to the next big Facebook or social media platform like Facebook soon rather than later. There's TikTok out already. There's Instagram, which to my knowledge hasn't been affected. Today on Facebook, some of the stuff me and my colleagues have been doing is testing what has been affected, whether links to publisher content can still go visible on groups, in messenger chats. It's pretty sweeping so far from what we can see. And I really think it was a reaction that Facebook, the reaction that Facebook came out with was hurt a lot of people as much as the media code proposed would have to small businesses.
Majority of the people that reacted, which is not a lot of people reacted in Facebook, as in my connections, but a lot of people reacted in LinkedIn, which is the professional, I guess the professional platform. And it almost didn't matter in Facebook, or it didn't matter in Facebook because people didn't share it. You know what I mean? It was pretty quiet there. You know,
what I would be super interesting, what I would find super interesting would be if all of these people have come to Facebook first thing in the morning with their cup of coffee before going to work, and would hypothetically go to ABC as their trusted source of news.
Yes.
If they are now going to the ABC website instead, or whether they're consuming news in another way, be that through Google or they're going to Twitter. That's what I'm really interested in. Like, how are the users now finding their media content? That's what I want to know.
As an expert SEO, how do you think this media code can affect how we market? Given that you already said that they, as in the Australian consumers, will probably go to other outlets, media outlets. How do you reckon digital marketing will be affected here?
So one by one, I think SEO stands to change a lot. The impact to businesses will be significant, but of course there are competitors to Google from a search engine perspective to fill the gaps. It's really only from a search engine perspective, Google that's affected to my knowledge. It's Facebook and it's Google. There are other search engines that won't be affected in the same way for different use cases, the Amazons of this world, TripAdvisor. Different search engines aren't going to be affected by this, but Google, the most widely used search engine, the one we all use really, that could really be significantly affected if the media code goes ahead. But Google has made attempts to compromise and pay publishers for their news content. So hopefully we don't lose search. If it does, and we do lose search, I see a lot of people going to Bing, and also there being a significant gap in the market for new up and coming search operators, which would be really interesting too. But I mean, people searching to find things and find businesses and find services and asking questions, that's never going to change. The online world has just made that kind of part of all of our lives. So whether it be through Facebook or another format, another search engine, I look forward to seeing how it will be, but that won't change. And when there's consumer behavior around search, there will be services around search engine optimization and providers to fulfill that need, both on the search engine side and the marketing side. The same will go for all marketing activity. So these big operators being affected won't necessarily affect the marketing efforts. It'll just change how we need to, it'll rewrite the rule book, I guess.
Yes, that's right. Facebook as a traffic source is still, as far as I'm concerned, big. And you know this, that's majority of my work. It comes from from Facebook advertising and Facebook marketing. The other one that I can foresee happening is businesses say, hey, I appeared in this news, I appeared in Channel 9. They can't just quote that anymore. You can't just put a link that this actually worked. You know what I mean? And also I'm curious how the advertising spend will be affected, because contrary to what media, the mainstream media is saying, is they're missing out on advertising revenue. Well, it's actually not true, because from Facebook and Google, they're getting free traffic, and
100%. Well, I mean, it's not inconceivable for everything to be affected. Like if Facebook needs to lose its presence in Australia, you would assume there would be less expenditure from advertisers in Facebook. Likewise, if Google, worst case scenario, gets affected and the search product of Google leaves Australia in some capacity, and that will likely change to the extent that we don't really use Google in Australia. We have to use Google US, and it's a difficulty to find.
Yeah, that'll be hard. Results. Yeah.
I really do think that AdSense will be affected. Why would you want to utilize to the same extent a marketing tactic when it doesn't offer you the same exposure?
Do you have any SEO tips on how businesses can pivot around this, if they're affected, that is?
Sure. I think for publishers, the most important thing now is to turn inwards and make sure your website is up to date, your metadata, your title tags, your website content includes keywords, but at a more high level, your content aligns with what people are searching for. If you would use the words to search in Google, if that matches what your content reads like, you're probably doing a better job than you could be. As long as that's on point, that's a really good starting point. Links, content, technical SEO, these are always going to have a place, and that's really where I would start. It's obviously super important that marketers at these publishing houses look at the full digital marketing mix, look at email, keep looking at paid while the opportunity is still there. I think it's really important we do say as marketers that whilst we still are getting traffic, we don't shut off the tap, but really just do research. What's the best next thing you can do? Even if it's like marketing on TikTok or Instagram, there's always going to be opportunities for marketers to get traffic.
Yeah, correct on that one. So most people should go within, find other avenues if they want their revenue stream to come in or their traffic to keep on coming in. So the website, I guess, is back again as a centerpiece if this happens, right? Because I know some businesses don't even have websites. They just have a Facebook page.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be more than a business card in 2021 with all these changes happening.
I like that. How would this affect businesses in general, do you think?
I mean, it's so hard to say. I personally don't think the changes, like the tangible changes to Facebook that we've seen today, as staying the way they are today. I think there'll be lots of amendments to the algorithm. I mean, I don't know if I'm misquoting, but I think Facebook has utilized multiple technologies to detect what is like a news site, a publisher, and that might need to change. It needs to get more sophisticated. I know for certain that Facebook and Google don't want to leave the Australian market completely. No one wants to leave money.
No one wants to do that. I don't think they would.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So how it changes remains yet to be seen. As we can see for now, there's a lot of content that's been removed, particularly from pages where content needs to be there. Fire safety services around Australia, government organizations, helplines, content's been removed because it's been incorrectly flagged as publisher content when it's really just links to helplines on websites. So that will be amended. It remains to be seen how this will affect ultimately. I think if we can wait a week or two, we'll have a better idea of how things might look in the coming months.
As far as the Australian community is concerned, and let's say if news is, let's say, continues to be permanently blocked in Facebook, this could be a big question for a Thursday. How do you think Australian culture will change without news on Facebook? Because if news in Facebook, let's say, continues to be blocked, I wonder what will happen to Australian culture.
Yeah,
I,
it's super interesting. I
mm,
definitely think that I don't think we're going to stop consuming news overnight.
no, we won't.
I definitely think there'll be a lot more people who are opting into websites with regularity. I don't know if we're going to go back to old tech like RSS feeds where we'll be getting email updates. But I think now more than ever, it's super important for people to be focusing on their email chains, making funnels, ensuring content is able to easily get to users in their inbox, because Facebook and Google's future in Australia is at the very least uncertain. So like working around that being like a large percentage contributing traffic source to a website is no longer safe.
Yeah,
As for everyday Australians, it might even be a good thing. Less
it
time
might
on
be. I
Facebook
think
and
it could be
seeing
a
the world.
little, yeah, a bit more good. We're not as divided because with the news,
Yeah,
it becomes us against them, right?
yeah.
If you just can look at our cousins in the US, how divided they got because of the news. I wonder if this happens to Australia, maybe that divide will be less. You know,
Mm.
Mm. I wonder if the media laws will also affect LinkedIn. What will LinkedIn do? Because considering that Microsoft, which is the owners of LinkedIn, already raised their hands. If Google leaves, they're going in there with Bing.
Yeah.
And if Facebook leaves, they're probably going to go in there as well and do that. I wonder what they're going to do.
Well, to my understanding, and I mean, I might be wrong about this, but I think one of the big sticky points about the media code was the fact that Google is trying to keep users in their own ecosystem through means like AMP. So for those who don't know, accelerated mobile pages, where Google will show a version of a website's page without them actually leaving Google. But still sending the traffic to the advertiser or news publisher. And I think that was a big point of conflict.
Yeah.
How that will affect, I would really suspect that Microsoft would want to keep users in their ecosystem from Bing to LinkedIn as well, and they would try and operate similarly. But if they're raising their hand to step up to the plate, I can't see them doing anything too egregious that would make the government amend their laws so that Bing isn't able to operate here either.
Yeah.
But I am super interested to just sit down, grab some popcorn, and see how this unfolds over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. And remember this media code, the ABC News, which is the most reliable news source for us concerned, and SBS is not part of it. Channel 9, Channel 7, Murdoch, News Corp, they all want a piece of the pie of the media revenue, right? But to the ABC, they don't get anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how this will unfold. Like, I think it is fairly conservative to say the media code will change before it comes to play, or at the very least, it will be amended. I don't see this media code being the final iteration and it just goes as proposed and gets made law, and then that's it in Australia. I think it will change. And I do think how other publishers are included will change as well. I don't think this is the last iteration of the media code or the agreement between current providers of search and social in Australia relate to that.
Just to make sure that everybody understands this, I'm a digital marketer. Ollie's a digital marketer. We're not taking sides. We're just literally voicing out what we think about this media code. Yeah. So our peers and colleagues that are in the news or big media side, it's all good. We're still peers. We're still friends. We're still connections that we can work with. This is not against you. This is not against us. This is just a mere discussion on what is the effect of this media code in our industry. And on that note, thank you, Ollie, for coming. Thank you for spending time with us and answering all these questions. It's a tough one considering it's day one. And I would like to invite you to come again as this media code unfolds into a law and what will happen then.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. It's been great chatting and I can't wait to see how this unfolds.
Yeah, let's keep on chatting about this because I think it's going to be one of those long-term effect on our industry, which is marketing and business. And we will need to see what can we do to pivot around that. And that's what's important, because we have customers, we have clients that rely on us on digital, that need to know, oh, well, okay, we can't use that now. What else can we use? And that's what this conversation is all about. And on that note, thank you very much for coming. Have a good day.